In today's lecture, we're going to look at the significance of personal names in different cultures. First, we need to define our terms. What do we mean by terms like family name or given name? After that, we'll look in detail at naming traditions in two specific cultures. Firstly, one of the tribal groups of Native Americans in the United States, and secondly, the Han tradition of naming in China. Finally, we'll see how these two examples relate to the wider question of the significance of names in society. So, what do we mean by personal names? Well, personal names fall into three very broad categories. One, family names or surnames, such as Schmidt, Gonzalez, Mandela, Jarvis. Two, given names or first names, Thomas, Catherine, Maria, Ahmed. And then middle names, which some cultures use more than others. The main focus in this lecture will be given names, taking into account social, historical, and cultural perspectives. But first, just a brief word about surnames. Surnames, or family names, are the names that show that a person belongs to a particular group. This could be a family group or tribal group, like the MacDonalds in Scotland, or it could be a geographical group, people who come from the same village or region. The names de Silva and da Costa in Portuguese, for example, refer to people who live in or near the forest or near the coast. Silva means wood or forest in Portuguese. Costa is coast. Surnames can also refer to an occupational group. So names like carpenter or baker. A carpenter is someone who makes things from wood. A baker is someone who bakes bread. So, in the past, you maybe had a man in a village called John, and he was the man who made the bread for the village. So, he was known as John the Baker. John Baker. In many cultures, we also find patronymic surnames, surnames taken from the name of the father. There are many examples of patronymic names in Northern Europe and Scandinavia, such as Eriksson, son of Eric in Swedish, or Ivanovna, daughter of Ivan in Russian. In modern society, surnames have become very important for administrative reasons. But compared to given names, in most countries, they're a relatively recent phenomenon. So, for example, in the Netherlands and Japan, surnames were not in common use until the 19th century. Given names are a much more ancient tradition than surnames, and these are what I'd like to look at now. The question for sociologists is not just what influences parents to choose a particular given name. It's also interesting to examine how the choice of name influences a person's character or their prospects in life. So, I've chosen the example of the Apache, one of the major Native American tribal groups in the southwestern United States. I've chosen the Apache because names have a particular significance, a particular meaning in their culture. Traditionally, Apache men, like this guy here, this is the Chiricahua Apache, Geronimo. Apache men were named after a particular trait of their character or a particular thing they had done, perhaps an act of bravery. Until one of these things became obvious to everyone, the child was simply called Boy. So among the Apache, we find given names like Always Ready or Strong Swimmer. So Geronimo was what the Americans called this man, but his Apache name was something like goyachle, which means one who yawns. And these names could change during a person's life according to the development of their character or to significant events in their lives. Okay, let's look at naming traditions of Apache women. Now, the women in Apache culture were named in the same way as the men, that is, after a character trait or significant action. Some women could also be named after things in nature, things familiar to the tribe. So, for example, something like morning star or bird singing. However, the main difference between men's and women's names in Apache culture was because they had different lives, different roles in society. So, for Apache women, life was more domestic. And so they had fewer significant events in their lives. And the names they were given reflected this.